Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you for tuning in to our on-demand presentation entitled How to Strengthen Your Chamber with Business Intelligence and Data-Driven Decisions. My name is Joe Hager, and I'm your moderator for today and the Senior Vice President at Acrosoft. Here at Acrosoft, we focus on building websites and total solution software for chambers and other nonprofit organizations. We're also very grateful to be longtime partners with ACCE and are excited to present once again at this year's summit. To kick things off, I'm very excited to introduce our panelists for today's presentation. Patty Powers is the membership manager at the Tampa Bay Chamber, where she's been working with membership, operations, and engagement metrics for the last 3 years. Rebecca Saxton has been with the Chamber of Wichita for the last 2 years as the Director of Data Operations, where you can find her at any point in time sipping on a cup of coffee and analyzing data. Both Rebecca and Patty are experts in using business intelligence to make data-driven decisions, and I'm excited for both of them to share more about their experiences in strengthening their chambers. Now, before we get started, I just wanted to go over some quick housekeeping items. First, this recording is obviously available and recorded, will be available during the summit, but we'll also make sure that it's readily available afterwards as well. Following the conference, you'll still have access to view and share the webinar right from Acrosoft's website at acrosoft.com. We also have an accompanying PDF, which is located in Acrosoft's virtual booth. We'll add this to our website post-conference as well. The topic of today's presentation is all about making data-driven decisions. I'll be moderating a discussion between Patty and Rebecca using questions gathered from within the chamber industry. These questions are going to be focused on how to use business intelligence, how to determine KPIs, and how to make good decisions from your data. Our key goal today is to provide actionable insights. We want each person to walk away with at least one gold nugget of information that can positively impact your chamber. So before we kick things off with our panelists, and just to make sure we're all reading from the same sheet of music, I'm going to start with a quick background presentation on business intelligence over the next few slides. So what exactly is business intelligence, or BI for short? Well, BI leverages software and services to transform data into actionable insights that inform an organization's strategic and tactical business decisions. BI tools access and analyze interconnected data sets and provide analytical findings in reports, summaries, dashboards, graphs, charts, and even maps to provide users with detailed intelligence about the state of their business. So, in a nutshell, BI is the act of distilling down massive amounts of data into usable insights. But why use BI? Especially when we have other techniques such as leaning on personal experience, gut feelings, working relationships, etc. Well, the truth is that all these methods should be incorporated, but BI has many things going for it. For instance, you can use BI to generate focus within your chamber, analyzing data and financials to make sure you're not trying to be all things to all people. You can also make more informed decisions and make them faster, using KPI dashboards that update in real time. And with tighter focus and more informed decisions, you can drastically improve employee and member satisfaction, maximize productivity, and gain a competitive edge. But for those of you who've not yet delved into the world of big data and business intelligence, where should you start? First, you should reflect on the scenario and understand your starting point. From there, you can work with key team members or consultants to develop a plan for data collection. In tandem with that, you can also begin determining your primary KPIs by deriving them from your strategic goals and find your preferred BI software tool. Now, there's no shortage of BI software tools out there, but there's typically one that fits best for your unique scenario. For example, all of Acrosoft's total solution customers leverage QuickSight since we've created a full database integration with Amazon's BI software. Some other options include Power BI from Microsoft, Cognos from IBM, and Tableau, just to name a few. So now that we've covered the basics of BI and where you should start, let's talk about two real-world scenarios that you all might be experiencing. In scenario one, your chamber has multiple silos of data. This can come in many different shapes and forms. For example, you may have the data in a CRM, use Constant Contact for emailing, track website stacks through your web portal, and even run events through Eventbrite. As you can imagine, this scenario can make it difficult to gather insights across your entire organization, since data is housed in separate databases and requires complex coordination to combine it. Some possible solutions here are to switch to an all-in-one software system, hire a third-party data consultant, or attempt to manipulate your data manually in-house. In scenario two, your chamber has a consolidated database or total solution, making it less complex to aggregate and use your data. In this case, you should start by talking to your software partner and see which BI tools they recommend. For Microsoft users, we always recommend QuickSight since we can leverage Amazon's AI and data visualizations within our system. This will likely be different depending on the current software partners that you work with. Now, to close out the introduction on business intelligence, I'll leave you with this. Regardless of which scenario you're in, where you are in the process, or what prior steps have been taken, you should always begin with the end in mind. When it comes to business intelligence, it's always best to measure twice and cut once. Okay, so with that, I'd like to reintroduce our panelists for today and get started with our curated question and answer. And I'd like to start with Patty. So Patty, to set the stage for today's listeners, could you please tell us a little bit about some key strategies and goals for the Tampa Bay Chamber? And you're muted. Just a little Zoom fun.
We've been doing this for 1.5 years and we still have those moments. Thank you. Okay, so I'm happy to talk about that. About the year 2016, the Tampa Bay Chamber came together with our board and our executive leadership team and developed what we call our 10-year vision plan. Where do we want to be in 10 years? And now that it's 2021, we're about halfway through there. With that, we determined in 2016 that we had 3 operating pillars that we were going to focus our energy and our effort as an organization towards. 1 being a catalyst for change, 2 being a hub for business, and 3 being an inclusive organization. So consequently, for the last 5 years and the next 5 years going forward, everything we do and everything we will be doing aligns with those 3 pillars.
Wonderful. And I know we'll dive a little bit deeper into that as we go, but Rebecca, just interested in hearing some of the key strategies that you all have developed at the Wichita Chamber.
Yeah, absolutely. Similarly to what Patty said, we worked with our board of directors, our staff members and volunteers to create a strategic plan in 2019. We have 6 strategic goals in the areas of small business, talent, diversity, equity, and inclusion, advocacy, pride in place, and sustainability as an organization that we kind of focus on. And all of our work within the chamber is targeted towards one of those areas.
Wonderful. And Rebecca, sticking with that, would you be able to elaborate a little bit on some of those KPIs within those metrics?
Absolutely. So to give a couple examples in the area of small business, one new thing that we rolled out recently is a new web page on our site that is a hub where small businesses can go to get resources and some advice and data points. So
Awesome.
One of the KPIs that we track for that is simple as website hits for that web page. So we utilize Google Analytics to pull that. Another KPI that we track is targeted towards our small business awards program. And that is something that we look at the number of nominations we receive and then the number of applicants from that list of nominees. So those are some ways that we track KPIs in the realm of small business.
Wonderful. And Patty, you mentioned in a previous conversation that you all have worked a lot with diversity, and you've actually developed a diversity dashboard. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So one of the things that we value in the pillar of being an inclusive organization is that we want the chamber to look like the greater Tampa Bay business community. And so when we started taking a look at what our mix of, whether that's by business type or business ownership or individual members, we recognized the need that in order to be that inclusive organization and be a reflection of the greater Tampa Bay community, we needed to be able to track that information. So back to when you were talking earlier, Joe, about developing those KPIs and also recognizing your organization goals, they really have to go hand in hand. And so with that desire to move towards a more inclusive organization, the diversity dashboard was born. We look at not only our member companies by their ownership, but we also look at individuals, starting with mainly our leadership program, the people that are involved in our leadership program. And all of that is self-reported information. But the nice thing about that is we can look at it based on one different diversity qualification, if you will, or we can look at it at different combinations. So we can look and see if a business is Black, Hispanic, and female owned, or just Black owned, or just Hispanic owned, or Hispanic female owned. And so we can slice and dice that in all the different variations that are out there and really get a sense of what our chamber makeup looks like. And then compare that to data that you can get at your local government, from your Economic Development Council, or, wherever you would get that kind of demographic information in your community.
Got it. And you mentioned that that data is self-recorded. Could you elaborate a little bit on how you're actually capturing the data? Is it manual, using technology, automated? Just some more.
Mostly, that's a great question. Mostly it's self-reported on a join form. So when somebody joins and signs on with our organization, we ask those questions. They're not required. So if somebody chooses to not self-report, we respect that right for them to do that. And it's quite literally check boxes. So you can check all the boxes or you can check none of the boxes. And that really is driven by, what your comfort level is as either an individual or as an organization.
Got it. So essentially your primary source is when somebody joins or when a company joins, maybe some other forms on the website or any paper forms as well.
Correct.
Becca, how about the Wichita Chamber? And I know that you all are collecting demographic data, but I'm interested in maybe some other examples that you could elaborate on for how you collect data.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we try to think of the ways that we collect data on a number of different levels. So our application is a great entry point where we're collecting a lot of different information on the members' interests and how they want to interact with the chamber, as well as that demographic information. We also try to capture that information later on at various points in a member's history with us and relationship, so that we kind of keep that ongoing. So one of the things that we're recently rolling out is an application for our guests for the podcasts that we started in the last year, to kind of capture the information about the small business owner that we're featuring on that podcast episode. We'll capture demographic information and some of their updated social media handles and things like that. So Microsoft Forms is what we use, and it's integrated into our website. So we've got that. But we also do a number of other things. So we'll capture some information. We're partnering with a local university, WSU, to conduct a demographic competency survey for the businesses in our community. So we're partnering with them, and so we have the benefit of utilizing some of that information. And we also work with our regional association, WACE, to conduct a survey of all of our members every couple of years so that we can benchmark ourselves as an organization and how we're doing on the Net Promoter Score, as well as a couple other data points there. And something as simple as our legislative survey that we send out to members annually. So kind of runs the gamut, but we try to get information from members as often as we can and utilize that to our full advantage.
Absolutely. And I'm going to throw this out there just because I kind of heard this squeezing in, but really data can be collected or can be observed. right? So you have data that you're collecting from a join form or from another entity or organization, somebody's reporting information to you, versus within whatever mechanisms and systems that you have different actions and insights that are being performed. So somebody attends an event, that's collected, that's data that's being tracked. Any comments or thoughts on that side? I know this is a new question that I'm just throwing out into the mix.
Well, I think it's really important. You make a great point that when you're looking at your data, you understand where it comes from. So collected, being self-reported in whatever way you find that information out directly from the person who is handing you that information, versus observed, meaning you can look at, say, the trends in your events, and you could look at, how many people attend events of, that are of certain types of events, because we all have different events that are targeted to different audiences, and how those event attendances trend over time is an observed metric that you can take, and you could make correct deductions from, or you could easily make incorrect deductions from. So understanding when it's observed, you may have to dive a little bit deeper into what that information is telling you. That first glance at that information may be misleading based on just what a number says.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And this is really where business intelligence and software systems come in to help you visualize that information, because it can get very complex. It's very large data sets. It's a lot of noise. And when you can distill it down to some of those KPIs that you all define, and you visualize it in a graphic, like a pie chart or a bar graph, a line graph, those can be really useful for making those key decisions. Now, building off of that, and speaking of making decisions with your data, I'm interested in maybe just some real world examples from your chambers as far as how you're taking this information from your dashboards and from your BI and making some really key chamber initiative type of decisions. And let's kick it back over to Rebecca here first.
Yeah, thanks. So one of the examples that comes immediately to mind is we actually have been looking pretty closely at our small business awards program. In 2020, we kind of put that on a hiatus and reimagined how that small business awards program looked. And based on member feedback and the feedback of our volunteers, our committee members, we really realized that the ease of application was something that was important to our members. And we realized that we have a lot of businesses that are nominated, but the percentage of businesses who are nominated who actually go through the application process is changes quite a bit from year to year. And so those are two areas that we saw trending and we wanted to focus on a little bit. So we're really looking at how to make that application process easier for our members. And we're also looking, instead of just looking at the total number of applicants or the total number of nominees and tracking that from year to year, we're really evaluating the number or the percentage of nominees who actually go through the application process. For us, the application process involves our members analyzing their own businesses, communicating their stories to us via our committee who rates those applications and does the scoring. So that application process is what's most valuable to those members. So really trying to increase the number of applicants from the total number of nominees. So that is one example for us.
So in short, looking at the small business awards program, determining that your rate of people actually filling out this application was a percentage that you maybe thought was a little bit low, and you looked at how to improve that.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of, just to sum that up.
Yep, that's perfect.
Okay, awesome. That's a great insight. And Patty, how about you?
One of the key indicators that we'll take a look at is what a member's total investment is, and that generally and traditionally across chambers breaks down into dues investment versus non-dues investment. And dues investments are pretty simple and straightforward, but you also have to remember too that with dues investments you have at least in our case with the Tampa Bay Chamber, we have a very wide difference between our entry-level member or our first level all the way up to our partner level member. And what does that mean for their membership? Now, there are benefits that are included with membership that come with that different level. So some of those non-dues opportunities will look different for some of those memberships, and working with the organizations in ways to increase those non-dues investments by that organization, whether it's sponsorship, whether it's different event attendance, whether whatever other types of programming you're offering that they can get involved in. Taking a look at those across your different types of membership is just one way that you can target how you reach out for that non-dues investment and make that something that's bubbles up to the priority level within your organization.
Well said, Patty. And I know just from my experience in working with different chambers out there, this is a key metric that you do have to be careful with, right? There's every chamber and every organization might have a difference of opinion as it pertains to how things slice and dice here. So when you're building out a dashboard or you're looking at metrics and you're using this observed data, making sure you're looking at the right thing and you have it visible in the right way. So building off of this, you were just elaborating a little bit more on non-dues, Patty. Interested in just understanding, and maybe for everybody who's listening in, some membership and retention specific metrics that you're using just to engage with members or look for new members out there.
One of the key ways that we look at our retention is actually in the dollars that we retain versus the actual number of members that we retain. And the reason we do that is really very simple. And this is where the KPIs and being able to cut your information into different segments really can tell the story. Our higher level members that we call partners, they pay considerably more for their membership dues than our first level Fit One members do. And they also, because of their commitment and their work with the chamber in very different ways than a Fit One level member does, they tend to stay with the chamber. They're kind of your community institutions, if you will. So the retention for those members is very high. They also have the higher dollar amounts and will drive your dollar numbers up to a higher level. Those first level members, those what we call a Fit One, that's kind of where you have your highest churn rate, if you will, where you have a lot of people join and then you have a lot of people leave after a year or 2 years. And so you'll see those numbers be significantly lower. But if you step back and look at your organization on the aggregate, your retention percentage as a dollar amount, which really is what's driving your organization, because after all, we are all membership organizations and the dollars are what really keep us all in business. In our case, those dollar amount retention numbers are what we track, because we realize that that's really the more important indicator for us to continue doing the things that we do.
Yeah, and it seems like there's a healthy conversation that's been going on for years around the chamber world about retention metrics and how you should best track it, and the difference between a regular retention versus a first year member retention, and if it should be the count versus the amount. So these are really good points, and I'm sure that there are a lot of chambers out there interested in learning more about that from both of these chambers that you all work with. But moving over to Rebecca, and we just to rephrase this, we're talking more in terms of membership and some other insights. Anything that you'd like to add here?
Yeah, absolutely. We really focus on some similar metrics in our chamber, but one thing that has stood out to us over the last few years is we were bringing in an outside campaign to do a membership drive, and we were noticing at those lower levels especially that churn was really high. We were getting in a lot of new members, and then we were seeing a deep dive in our membership numbers overall. And absolutely, we have our high-level investors who help sustain our organization, but in order to just make the overall organization a little bit more sustainable in maintaining some more continuity in our membership, we decided, based on the overall trend over time, seeing those peaks and those valleys, to really bring those membership drives in-house, to do them with a smaller group of volunteers who really know the chamber really well and are passionate about seeing the chamber grow long term. So I think that was a really quick example of where we're looking at that trend over time and using it to change gears.
Absolutely. And so you said you saw some insights from the data saying that with your old campaigns, they were the retention rate was a little bit lower than you expected, and that was the decision that y'all made to bring that more in-house.
Yeah.
That's an amazing example, and thank you for telling everybody that. Now, I've said a couple times here, I've kind of squeezed this in a little bit, but for those of you who caught it, but the one thing you should always look out for is bias as it pertains to KPIs and your dashboards and data in general. And there's a school of thought out there that thinks that anybody can have a decision from any piece of data and be correct. It's kind of like economics. So just moving into that concept, Patty, do you have any examples, or what are your thoughts on some ways that data and these dashboards might be deceiving if you're not careful?
Well, it's really simple, and I think you just really pointed it out in your intro here to the question, and that's, if you're looking at one number, you can deduce whatever you want from that one number. But if you look at a whole set of those numbers and those KPIs, then you're going to have to look at them and ask yourself some hard questions. One of the things that I really like to do with our data dashboard that shows our KPIs is I like to take a month and pick that month and then look at all of my KPIs across the board for that month and see if I can spot a trend. And then maybe what I'll do in that month is I'll break it down by our different membership levels and see if I spot a trend. And maybe I'll break it down by our diversity or the business type or whatever other ways that we track our membership. But you've got to take the time to say, you know what, I don't know what I don't know. Let me see what I can find. Let me take a look at this, one way, and then I'm going to look at it another way, and maybe something will present itself to me that I hadn't considered prior to that. And that's really the power of having all of those different KPIs. Standing alone, they can give you some information, but as a group, they become just that much more powerful.
So it's really the insights from cross-examination that are the important part, and understanding what you're looking at. And now, are you using that data, or have you used that data to alter any membership pricing across the board or make any major changes recently?
So we did do a price increase a couple of years ago, and I think the most important piece of it all was that for that entry level membership did not increase the price, because that's the price point that we felt like we have the greatest volume of members coming in. Once again, back to the numbers versus the percentage of dollars. And so we did not want that to become a barrier to entry. So a great example of that was the decision to not increase that price point where we increased others.
And Rebecca, do you guys do the same thing, or have you done the same thing?
Yeah, we went through a really similar process in 2019, and we are also currently in the process of evaluating our overall dues structure. We're currently on a fair share dues model, and we're crunching all of our numbers in as many ways as possible to try to figure out moving to a tiered structure, what that would look like, what kind of target points as far as revenue and membership numbers that we're looking at. So having all of that data available to us has been invaluable in that process and in those discussions. So.
And Patty, have y'all made any shifts on the website specifically, or with anything else?
Really, we just are the process of rolling out a really dynamite new website that we're really excited about. I think at the end of the day, we recognize that a lot of people stop at your website before they join. They take a look around, they look to see what they see, what they're looking for, they'll look at your directory. And then for many, many members at those, in our case, for our first 2 level of memberships, they'll join without even calling and speaking to somebody at the chamber. They'll see what they see, they like what they see, they're like, I want to be a part of this, and they'll click that join button on the website. When you get up to the higher levels of membership with the higher commitments and investments, that's when we really engage in the sales process, and we will work directly with the members of those organizations to talk to them about what membership at those higher level means. Because with a broad group of members that we serve with the Tampa Bay Chamber, people join for different reasons. And they can join for different reasons within the Fit One category, but the person who joins as an organization that joins as a Fit One is going to have very different expectations of what a chamber membership means to them than it does at the Fit 3 level. So knowing that we need to be more involved with those members that join at those higher levels and not necessarily as involved. I mean, we will be as involved as we need to be for those folks that are joining at that Fit One level, but recognizing that there's a very different need from those members and knowing how to approach that with them.
Yeah, and so you've said a few times in this presentation, Fit One, Fit Three. Could you just give everybody a quick, high-level, 10,000-foot overview, just in case they're not familiar with that model?
Certainly. Fit One is our entry-level membership point, and that is the only membership point that is limited to the number of employees. You can't have more than 15 employees in your organization to be considered eligible to be a Fit One. After that, all of our membership levels are based on what the person is looking for in their membership and what they want to do as a member of the chamber. So from there, it goes to Fit 2, 3, 4, all the way up to partner. And the price range is from $450 all the way up to a $20,000 investment.
Great. And Rebecca, so you all are on the fair share. Is that just, in general, would you give a quick overview of exactly what that means just for everybody in the room? The virtual.
Yeah, for sure. We model our dues based on the number of full-time equivalent employees that a company has locally. So we go local and non-contracted employees and base their dues value on the number of employees they have locally. So that in theory, the smaller businesses are able to have a more affordable membership, and those larger businesses are paying more into an overall chamber investment, so that they're kind of offsetting some of that cost for those smaller members.
Great, and that makes perfect sense. And I know that we'll talk about this at the end, but people can connect with you all after the webinar, the virtual webinar, if they'd like or have any questions on any of these topics. But shifting gears a little bit here, I know that 2020 was a very interesting year, and seeing as a lot of chambers are now starting to do business intelligence reporting and data-driven decision-making, how do you see COVID impacting your overall data or your reports that you already had in place? And Patty, we'll just shift that one over to you.
Okay, thank you. Well, you know what, I think first step was that we were very grateful that we had our KPIs and our BI reporting in place for years before COVID impacted us, because we really, going forward as we come out of COVID in 2021, and now we're in the process of planning for 2022, we're benchmarking off of 2018 and 2019, because we know 2020 was an off year. And if we didn't have those metrics to work off of from prior years, we would be, really challenged at this point in time to try to plan for whether it's the rest of 2021, because we have certainly had to reevaluate our plans throughout the course of this year, because January was looking very different than July is looking now. But then going forward into 2022, we can go back and look at the trend from, say, 2018 to 2019 and say, okay, this is where we were going in a normal business year. We're going to kind of take 2022 off the table and use that information from prior years to make our decisions and how to build our budget and plans for 2022.
And Rebecca, how about you all? How are you treating 2020? And I guess really the beginning of 2021 at this point, but within your reporting, and is that an outlier now, or do you have some strategy to use that data? What does that look like?
We're a little bit in both camps, very similar, very thankful for the data that we have prior to 2020, because absolutely that was a fluke. But we're realizing in 2021 that during 2020 and throughout the pandemic, people's mindsets have shifted, and the way that they're interacting with the chamber is going to look different going forward. So it's absolutely essential that we have that information from 2019, but we're also looking pretty closely at, for example, event attendance and how we saw people interacting with the chamber, whether that was virtually or now in more of our hybrid or in-person events. Moving forward, trying to figure out what people want from Chamber of 2022 and forward. It's been challenging to keep up with shifting mindsets and shifting availability for people. But it's been, I think, really valuable for us to take a deep, hard look at how we're offering different benefits and services and how we're interacting with each company individually and with our membership as a whole.
So in a nutshell, 2020 valuable data, maybe not what you'd want to benchmark off of for future years or, year over year returns like an investment. But it's definitely valuable. You don't want to forget it. And for those chambers who may not have these types of reports in place today, and maybe you're looking at setting these up, you can always try to gather data from past years and just aggregate data from spreadsheets, combine it in to really get those good benchmarking metrics, and just keep that in mind when you're doing that with 2020. So before we close, I wanted to just take a quick moment to see if both of you would like to share any other important points that we didn't really cover today, anything at all. It's just opening up the floor. I will start with Patty if you have anything, so we can make sure not to cross any Zoom boards here.
I think the one thing that we hadn't touched on that I think is very important, and that's to realize that once you set your KPIs, they're not static. It's a dynamic tool that you have, and understanding that you're going to want to add to those. Maybe you'll find some of them aren't really as valuable as you thought they were, or the nature of your business model has changed, or the business in your community has changed, and measuring a certain KPI doesn't really help your organization with its decision making. I would also say that one thing that I know our staff has learned over time too is once you start giving everyone more of those really good metrics that they can base business decisions on, they start thinking of more ways that they can use that information and for more data points that they'd like to have. And a great example is some of our engagement metrics. We started off with just measuring, okay, who's going to events, how many people and which people are going. And pretty soon it became, well, who's signing up for events and then either canceling or not going to those events, so that we can get a better idea of, whether or not we need to be doing something differently for some of those events. So once again, the one single number doesn't tell you the picture. And when we started being able to share that information, people were like, but if we knew this, we might be able to make an even better decision going forward. So that, constant process of self-evaluation and understanding your business and understanding that your business is changing and that your staff is changing, and their management of their programs and their events is always going to be looking for much better and usually more specific information as you go forward.
Well said. Rebecca, how about you? That's a tall order. That was a response from Patty. Let's see if Rebecca can have a better one.
Oh, we'll see. No, I think those were really great points, Patty, and really important things to keep in mind. One of the things that we do with that ever-shifting data is we actually reevaluate our strategic plan and plan out for the next 3 years every single year. So we're taking a look at, are those KPIs really the ones we need to look at, which is where that Small Business Awards program, like the shift in the metric that we were tracking, came in. The other thing that we really try to do, and we're pushing more and more just internally, is that we have, as staff members of the chamber and as volunteers, we have a collective responsibility for our data and how good it is and how much we're keeping up with, capturing our conversations with members and their engagement, and who we're using as vendors and who we're recommending. All of these things, I can't keep track of all of that. We all have access to the system. So really just enforcing with staff that, all of these interactions with our members are important and valuable and tell a larger story of our membership. And so trying to get all of that. So making sure that you're listening to other staff members, that they're interacting with the data, just like you said, Patty, interacting with events, interacting with the demographic data, all of that information is really critical. And then also, pulling volunteers into the process. Our board of directors and committees are really, really important to us as a chamber and offer really great insight. They are employees of member businesses, and so they can speak to what the member experience is like and really give us some different insight. So just maintaining those open lines of communication and always being willing to look at the data in a different way, I think are really, really important.
So I think we'll call that a tie. I think you both ended on high points there. Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Rebecca. And just in general, thank you so much for taking the time today and partnering with Acrosoft and ACC to cover this webinar. And to all of our listeners, we hope that you found a few gold nuggets that you can take back and apply to your own chamber. I'm going to go ahead and click over to our final slide where you have some email addresses here if you do want to connect myself, Patty, or Rebecca. And a special thanks to ACCE for putting on the summit year after year and bringing such a great value to the chamber community. So that's all for now. See you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, I have to, I guess, stop recording, but I guess that just happens when we end the call.
Nice job. You both were awesome.
Yeah.